And with that, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Father Anne.
You cannot swim for new horizons until you have courage to lose sight of the shore. I love this quote by William Faulkner because it resonates with something fundamental to my story. When I converted to Catholicism at the age of 29, I became totally immersed in the institutional church, deeply involved in parish life. I was attending Mass daily. I eventually went to seminary at a Jesuit institution and ultimately ran a parish as pastoral associate. When I walked as far as I could with the institutional church that I love so much, I had to let go to swim for the new horizon of being a priest. Maybe you can recall a time in your own life that you took such a leap of faith. So to understand my experience of the documentary, I think it'll be helpful for you to understand a little bit about who I am and what my work is. So my focus as a priest is entirely on church reform. A central part of this ministry is expanding the symbol of the traditional Roman Catholic priest, the way that the priesthood looks right now, expanding that symbol to include the body of a woman because its symbolic power is contracted down to the male form. So I'm exactly like any male priest in the institutional church. I wear the Roman collar, I'm celibate, I use the Roman missal, and I go by the title Father. I'm not a Roman Catholic woman priest. I'm a Roman Catholic priest who is a woman. So my primary ministry, I work with all kinds of people, but my primary ministry is to the institutional church, priests, bishops, cardinals, and pope. If I am doing exactly what any male priest is doing, then what is it precisely that women cannot do? I'm unmasking the lie that the male form is the only form proper to the sacrament of ordination. And I just want to say, these are not calculated choices. Father Anne is who I am. When I went through my conversion, I was formed by Jesuits. It's a very deeply male spirituality. And for me, it just works. I'm a female Jesuit. So I've come to really see that I am this way because God is using me to minister to the men in the institutional church, to make visible that which is not visible to them. So a key part of this ministry is working with the media. And I find it difficult. It's very challenging. It is a sacrifice for me. And I entered into the process of the documentary as formation for my path. So how did I get this opportunity? Women's Ordination Conference, a big thank you to Kate McElwee, who is tireless in her efforts for equality for women and people of all genders. So she got me started really on my path with the media. The BBC came twice. They came once in October 2021 to film my ordination weekend, which was a little party, my ordination, and then my very first Mass. And then they came back 6 months later in April to film the interview that you'll see that's mattered throughout the documentary, and my first Easter Mass. So when I entered into this process of formation, it was incredibly enlightening. I mean, it's it's a little stressful. So the first thing I recognized right away was that I had to be strong. I had to boldly, unapologetically claim my identity, my vocation as a Roman Catholic priest in a sea of opinions about who I am, what I'm doing, and how I'm doing it. So I had to be really strong. But the next thing is sort of the flip side was I had to be extremely vulnerable as well in all different kinds of ways. Like, for example, on a very practical level, the BBC was going to be in my little rundown apartment for all the world to see. So the night before my ordination, before they were going to arrive, I am on my hands and knees scrubbing my floor because I don't want the BBC to be seeing that, right? And then, of course, it's going to be my first Mass, my very first time ever saying Mass, and the BBC is going to capture it. Mistakes, like whatever happens, they're going to capture it, and I have to just let go. But the much deeper vulnerability was handing my story over. I mean, I knew that they were sympathetic, but I still, you can't control it. You have to let go of your story. All you can do is show up. So I really focused on remaining present with the Spirit through the process. And then, of course, letting go of my story in front of the world and just really becoming more and more comfortable with letting the world rip me apart. And all you have to do is go into the comments to get a little bit of the taste of how people react to my story. So in addition to that, the actual skills needed to be interviewed with these professional outfits, I put a lot of time into my preparation for the interview. I hope that comes across. I'm very eager to hear what you all think of the documentary. But no matter how much you prepare, once you're in the situation, once I was in the situation, things pop up. Like the first time the BBC came, they only sent a camera person, not a journalist. So he's asking me the questions, but I can't look at the camera to answer. So I have to look off to the side and talk to the wall. That is very difficult to give a decent answer when you're not looking into a set of eyes. Or when they came back the second time for my interview, the hot lights, I mean, I'm in my collar and I'm kind of a nervous person. And I'm trying to remain calm and, try not to sweat under these bright lights. So that was my first time experiencing all of that. And also very importantly, they are there to do a job, but advocating for myself in terms of agency. For example, my ordination was my focus. I had waited a long time for that day, and I did not want to be distracted by interviews or cameras. I just wanted to focus. And I explained that to Andrew, who's the camera person. And he was so gracious and completely understood. But that was an important lesson for me, to push back on the media when I need to do that. So it was a fantastic experience for me. I will leave you with a little behind the scenes anecdote before we watch. This was a tender moment that was just it tickled me so much. When the BBC returned to capture my first Easter, there is a woman who supports the ordination of women in the church. Her name is Carla, and she participates. She's a key part of the masses that I say. She participates, and Andrew was just getting some more content after the Mass was done, and I went into the sacristy to start to clean up. And so when I came back into the sanctuary, Carla had Andrew in front of the camera, and she was interviewing him. I was so hoping that was going to make it in, and it didn't. But so I sidled up to Andrew to join into the fun and had my pretend microphone. I said, "So, Andrew, yes, what do you think of Father Anne and her ministry?" And put the pretend microphone over to him, and we laughed and we joked around. But then he became very serious and earnest, and he shared something that it just really touched me very deeply. He said, "I've always been skeptical of religion, but after my experience here, I now see that religion can be a good thing." So that was a profound moment for me as a priest, of course. So I just want to offer a sincere thank you to Future Church, to Russ and to Deb for all the work that you do, for hosting this event here tonight, and for all of you who are here to watch the documentary and who care so much about this issue. So without further ado, enjoy the show.
So that was fantastic. So Father Anne, do you want to say a few more things and then we'll open it up for some questions and comments?
You know, seeing it again, it brings back a lot of happy memories for me, of course. And one thing I really do love about it is the juxtaposition between Reverend Olga and I in numerous ways. Obviously, we're in different countries, but she's deep into her priesthood and I'm just at the beginning. And, you know, I just think it's so well done in that way. I wanted to just share this quote from W.E.B. Du Bois. There is no force more powerful than a woman determined to rise. And with that, let's head to the Q&A.
Great. So if you have a question, I ask you to keep it short and to the point so that we can get as many in as possible. And you can use that little reaction sign to raise your hand. And so we'll get started here. So Kate, you have a question.
You're muted,
There we
Kate.
go. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there
Got
you go.
you. So I have a biological sister who is a nun, a sister, and believes that she is called to be ordained, and was actually had suit. Archbishop Raymond Burke of St. Louis at the time brought suit against her and served her papers and had her followed, and she had attended a women's ordination and took pictures of her. And he had the power, because she is a nun, to kick her out of St. Louis and tell her she could never come back and tell her she could not receive the sacraments. And essentially he was trying to excommunicate her. She had to get a canon lawyer and she appealed it, and it's still in appeal right now. So they will let her receive the sacraments now. And but it's going to stay in appeal. They're not going to do anything because there was so much public to do over it. So I don't want to go on too long, but is there any way that you can become a priest and not be excommunicated?
In the Episcopalian Church.
Yes, I know, but she wants to stay within the Catholic Church and work
You
from
can
within.
you can be ordained catacomb.
And that means?
So the ordination happens in secret, nothing is published, the identity of the woman is person is completely protected.
Right.
And so I would reach out to either RCWP or ARCWP and pursue that path. She can definitely be ordained.
She wants to be publicly ordained.
Yeah, it's a tough choice. I mean,
Yeah, it's
a difficult choice.
Yeah. All right.
There's no good choice. Everybody has to pick their path for what they can deal with.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
And
much
I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, it's just appalling.
Oh, they're still called the president of her congregation, because she's a nun, and they still call them and bring them to Rome and question them about her. And this is years and years later.
Wow. It's quite a way to spend time with all this poverty in the world.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Sorry. Yeah. So Joanna, you have a question.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Anne and Father Anne, and your wonderful talk and documentary. I was just wondering, do we need to go further, though, than simply ordaining women? Is it more also about changing the whole structure and having a less clericalized church, and married people also being able to be ordained? in the same sweep, like doing it all at once, rather than having women being ordained first and then they're still part of that hierarchical structure, which is quite, I think, is quite dysfunctional at the moment. Be interested in your thoughts. Thanks.
In my opinion, the only way that those sweeping changes are going to be discerned properly is if women are fully participating. So I don't expect the patriarchy to change its structure without women as part of it. And it's not just that. How can they discern what the structure should be if women and the way that God communicates through different groups is not present? So I wouldn't trust what they would come up with, if that makes sense. So to me, women have to be, that's like number one. It has to happen. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the institutional church very much. I hope that comes across. I do see that it has many problems. But it's like, you can't, the police do not police themselves. We know that so well from the sexual abuse scandal. So that's what I would say. Yes to married priests. Yes to a total overhaul of the sexuality teachings. Yes to women. Yes.
Thank you, Joanna. So let's move to Teresa. You have a question?
Hi, I was ordained in April in Canada with RCWP Canada. So I have some questions about your community. I just wondered, actually, I was ordained a deacon the same weekend you were, so I was thinking about you. So how often does your community worship, and where? And what size? Who is the community? And also, are you allowed to minister now in jails as pastoral, or in universities? Are you recognized there?
So my focus is on church reform. So I am actually not focused on building a community. I do offer Mass. I rent a space from a Lutheran church once a month to offer Mass, and people come and kind of like, let's see the female priest. What's it like? So if people can come, it could be very small, 5 people, sometimes 25 people. A core group comes every month. I have supportive lectors who want to see a community succeed, but that really, I can't do both right now. So as far as I know, I could go into jails and hospitals, but not recognize Roman Catholic, just as a Christian maybe, but I honestly haven't explored that yet. I'm kind of, a lot of my ministry is on the back burner because of the focus of the synod and this opening that is present. So I am going to start, I hope, saying Mass on public access television to reach more people and to just be a female embodiment of this symbol. That's such an important part. Yeah, I've done a couple weddings and a baptism and a memorial. Very interesting, beautiful opportunities.
Yeah, parallel to my own ministry. It's wonderful to see you and to hear about the televised. That's cool. We do Zoom liturgies here, and
excellent.
People come up from the States internationally. It's really a blessing to see who shows up on the screen. So
awesome.
Take care. Thank you.
You too, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. That's wonderful. Good questions. Suzanne, you have a question.
Yes, I'm wondering, as someone who does not at this time in my life feel called to priesthood, what can I do? What can we do who are not, but support women's ordination? What can we do to help?
There's a lot of things I think you can do. So one thing I am focused on is that audience with Pope Francis. So my hope is to really mobilize Catholics to make that happen. Everybody has a connection, a skill, a gift to give. So I would say if you are interested in seeing it happen, to reach out and to have a Zoom with me, to support Women's Ordination Conference all the way to, they are doing some seriously hard work constantly in the Synod and beyond with their programming. And I would say too, like, I would like to know what you all think about this, but something I wished I had, part of the deal with the documentary is, that was 10 months ago. I've grown a lot. There's a few things like, I just wish that I had said that differently. But one of the things is, we all know it's not just lay people who believe that women should be ordained as priests. There are thousands of vowed religious and ordained, but they're not speaking out publicly. I mean, they may be submitting their synodal feedback, but what would it be like if those corners of the institutional church came forward? Because the goal is we have to force the bishops. We have to make it so that they cannot ignore the issue. And all of us have a role to play in that. So yeah, I would say, reach out, give me a Zoom. We can brainstorm about how you particularly can contribute to open up a door.
Could you include your contact information in the, I actually,
Yes.
well, yeah, or I could grab something if you put it in the.
Yeah, it's vaticanreject@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Call it out.
Great. Grace, do you have a question?
Yes,
Grace
I have
Byerly.
several. I have several friends who are women priests. Several of them are married. One is also a grandmother. And I asked her what gave her the courage to finally go ahead. She said, I was tired of men telling me I was not being given a call, and I don't want to face God. And God said, did you hear me call and did you answer? Now, Anne, you said something that was kind of confusing to me, where you said you were excommunicated. Well, this friend of mine was told by our Archbishop she was excommunicated. And she said, well, you may think that, but the only one who can excommunicate me is God. And since God's doing the calling, I don't. But you had said that you are able to offer mass, celebrate liturgy, but you're not able to receive Eucharist?
So I'm automatically excommunicated. We all are automatically excommunicated. But the movement as a whole, this is a little bit of a distinction for me. The movement as a whole rejects excommunication because it's unjust. So, I mean, there's a Roman Catholic woman priest here, and she goes up to the altar and she receives. But I actually I'm regularly going to mass in the institutional church. And what I do is I accept my excommunication. And so I go dressed this way, and it's one of the most important moments of evangelizing everyday Catholics, because they see the female Catholic being denied communion by the male priest. It's a powerful moment. So I accept it, and I'm not going to receive Eucharist within the institutional church until this teaching is changed. I've had a couple pastoral moments with a priest and a deacon who they kind of wanted to offer it, but I'm not going to take it. I'm going to take my punishment, and that's out of respect for the institutional church, actually. And I just want to make a point. There's no wrong way to go about this. Like, we need all the ways to be prophetic to the institutional church. This is just my particular call. There's no way that's better or worse. Right. All these ways are needed. And I would also say, Grace, to that initial thing that you said, one of the primary problems with this is that, yes, they're making it that we're inferior, but what it really is that women are not competent to discern our call. And so we need a man to step in and tell us. And I'll tell you, I gave a talk at Villanova. You can see I get fired up. And this 18-year-old kid sat through my 45-minute talk where I poured my heart out and made the theological argument. He sat in the back with his laptop open, never listened to a word that I said. And then afterwards, I mean, he asked, a question about the 12. That was one thing also in the documentary I wished I'd articulated better. But afterwards, he wasn't satisfied when I ripped his little 12 argument to shred. So he comes up and tries to intimidate me. It's like, dude, you are an 18-year-old kid. I could be your mother, and you are telling me that I don't know how to discern my own call? Get serious. But he feels emboldened to do that. It's just an outrage.
Well, and the church today, it seems, would rather have empty pews, but most people today no longer believe this pay, pray, and obey.
They don't.
And
I agree. I mean, now is the time. I mean, it's just the time. I just know it.
so I still consider myself Catholic, but not according to the Boys Club in Rome. I'm Catholic
I
according to
understand.
the gospel message of Jesus, where it's universal, the universal Catholic. And so many of the prayers that I learned, I have to change the wording because they don't mean anything to me
And
unless
I
make it
understand.
personal.
And I think that's very important. That's why everybody's got to discern. And for me, it's a different call because I am making a point.
Thank you.
And we
Thanks.
need all the ways. We need all the ways to take on the patriarchy. There's no wrong
You don't want to
way.
be called, you don't want to be called Father Anne or Mother Anne, huh?
No, Father Anne all the way. You got to admit, Grace, it suits me, does it not? It suits me.
Thanks,
Thank
Grace.
you.
I love your fire. Joanne, do you have a question?
Well, I just, after in 2005, when our community lost its wonderful pastor of 25 years, we grouped together and we formed an intentional church, and we all celebrate. So, because, and a lot of us are older.
Yes.
So, we didn't feel, there would have been a couple that would have felt called to priesthood, but they were old too. So, but one thing I'd like to ask is if you could explain to me, I love the movement. I hope it's tomorrow that it changes. I know it won't, and probably not in my lifetime. But I have a thing with you're calling yourself father in a female body. Is that, I mean, I don't know why I do, but can you explain? I mean, are there some women priests who don't go as well? Like she went as Reverend Olga. It just,
Yes. So I'm the only father that I know of.
Okay.
Everybody, I think, goes by the title Reverend or Reverend Bishop. And a lot of the times, it's a lot more. So in the Roman Catholic woman priest movement, there's no hierarchy. It's the bishop only has ordaining power, but she is one among equals, really.
Right.
And so it's very familiar. I mean, I'm not kissing the bishop's ring or anything like that. So I'm doing it. I'll tell you, Joanne, you maybe missed my introduction. I spoke about.
No, I was here, but
Okay. And I'll tell you even too. So I'm embodying the traditional priesthood as it looks right now in the institutional church. But I mean, it's mocking, it's mocking the institutional church in a loving way, but also from just even a marketing perspective. I'll tell you, nobody cares what Reverend Anne has to say. Nobody. But people are very interested in what Father Anne has to say.
Okay.
So there is something about that. And also it's just who I am. It's just who I am. I prayed about the title before I chose it and it stuck.
Well, but
I understand why you don't like it. I get it. I just want to say I hear you.
Yeah, it kind of feels strange. But if a piece of it is mocking, then that's great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Okay, this is the last question because we're already after 8. Suzanne, you want to?
I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna go fast here because I'm not gonna question. So I'm gonna give you some more information a little bit here. And back to that real question about father, that is the most common question that people have asked over the last 20 years. What do we call you? And most of the women, as you just said, Anne, refer to ourselves by our first name, and we don't even use Reverend most of the time unless it's something formal. So you are alone, but we do some wear the collar, and there's quite a diversity in our whole movement. But I want to tell you real quickly, there are 283 of us worldwide in the Roman Catholic women priest movement. We just had our 20th anniversary. Dear Olga, that you saw on this BBC documentary, kudos to Olga. There are 17 Colombians. She has the most of any other place besides the United States as far as women priests in the movement. Excommunication, you talked about that, and that happened back in 2008, where we didn't even get formal paperwork. Now, some of the women have had formal paperwork about being excommunicated. It depends totally on the bishop and where you live as to what happens. Women religious, that depends too. I'm sorry to hear whoever that was right off the beginning who has the friend that got, the paperwork. I know I go back to a religious community in Philadelphia, and it takes a while for the religious community to begin to accept us. First, they didn't want me on the property again, and now they're okay. And I get communion. So it just depends. And I have gone up with a collar and gotten communion. Cardinal Mariaga gave both us a call at LA Religious Ed, communion with the collar on. So it just depends on who and where you are as far as your bishop goes more than anything, although we know the formal statements of the church. I call attention to worshiping liturgies, and there's in the chat list our websites. And there are a lot of them. We invite you to them. There are 85 or so around the country. We recognize the diversity of everybody. I'm almost done. The bishops and Roman Catholic women priests sent a letter, an open letter back in January to the people of God and to the hierarchy. It was printed in the New York Times. All we were asking for, Anne, is what you said at the end of this documentary, a dialogue. We just want to talk to you. Will you talk to us at least? Let's see, I'm almost done. Contact information, run it together, RomanCatholicWomenPriests.org, and you'll see a very extensive website with contact, with the names, bios, the whole bit. And we do need your support. So anything you can do to just tell us that we exist will be helpful, I think. And that's easy to do because you can go back home and say, oh, I saw these weird women with the collars on and they are women priests and hello. Because there's no question in my mind that my apostolic succession as a bishop is very definitely valid and extensive and has 6 popes in it and is better than many of the men and is very definitely there. So we believe we have apostolic succession, but we know we were a little illicit. So help us out, please.
Thank you, Susan. I see why you're a bishop.
We're not grave sinners. Yeah, give me the microphone, but we're not grave sinners. We're not like the pedophile priests. Look at all the wonderful things we're doing. And I'll send you a history booklet if you get a hold of me, if you want to know more. Okay, enough of that.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. All righty. We're going to wrap it up here. We're already way after the hour. So I want to just thank you, Father Anne, again. It was wonderful having you. It was wonderful hearing your story. Thank you all for joining us. Your questions were remarkable. Your stories are painful, but also, what we have to endure and go through and change in order to bring change into the Catholic Church. And I agree with Father Anne completely that this period is an exciting time, this synodal period, where, we're seeing a lot of firsts. People are actually saying back to our bishops and to the Pope, we need to talk about this issue and many other issues. And so this is a very good time to make your voice heard. There are lots of opportunities to do that. So we hope that you'll continue in that path, and we send you off with many blessings, Father Anne, as you continue your own work.